This show is a proud member of the Nerdy Legion Podcast Network. Get more at nerdylegion.com. Enjoy the show.
This is Brightside Home Theater. Hey, home theater nerds, welcome to Brightside Home Theater Podcast, the podcast that's all about the sights, the sounds, the scenes. And this week, we're going to go over the sights, the sounds, and the scenes from Zack Snyder's Justice League, aka the Snyder Cut, in 4K. Just came out this week in the US. I've had this copy for a few months now. I overpaid to get it shipped to me from Europe so that I would have this. I've been watching it for a while. Let's just say that. And I love the way it's broken up. I love how we have different parts that says part one, part two. We have an epilogue. This week, we're just going to talk about the prologue and part one, 36 minutes, 58 seconds. But don't panic, we have plenty to go over because I'm also going to compare it to Justice League. I loved that movie when it came out. I had a lot of fun with it. I said, what could be wrong? I'm like, I know, I had a great conversation with Tom Andrew from AV Rant on the difference in like how the tone was wrong. Man, is that evident. And honestly, before we get into going scene by scene, I have a few scenes that I will compare pictures of and scenes of from the two different movies because there's a couple of scenes that actually do line up, quite a few actually, but I'll talk about a few of them. And the difference is really amazing. And here's the thing. If you're a fan of this movie, you've already seen it. So I'm not going to talk about spoilers. We're going full spoilers right away because who hasn't seen this? If you do own the Snyder Cut, and you're watching this, you probably own Justice League because you're not buying the Snyder Cut. Maybe you did. But if you have both, I highly recommend checking them out. And then when you're done, here's my recommendation. DJ from Brightside Home Theater says that when you're done watching Joss Whedon's Justice League, you use that Blu-ray as a coaster. That's all I have to say. End of podcast. No, I'm just kidding. So, Snyder Cut, what a difference. I feel like what Zack Snyder does is very artistic. I mean, you watch Sucker Punch, Watchmen, 300, they all have special tones to them. The way he changes the image on the screen, the way he moves things, it all is very artistic. And that is what was missing in Justice League. Now, when you watch Justice League, the Joss Whedon's Justice League, that is, it comes off as very comic booky, which is great. It's very bright. It's very vibrant. We'll get into some differences, but the thing is it doesn't feel the same. And when you compare the two, as I was going through, so here's how I broke it down. I sat there, I watched the entire first scene, the entire first 36 minutes or whatever of Snyder Cut. Then I was like, I'm going to watch 36 minutes of Justice League and see the difference. And just switching back and forth, and I did have to take down my masking from Snyder Cut because Snyder Cut is in the 1.33 to 1 ratio, 4:3 ratio. And I like that. And speaking of that, if you're on YouTube, here I am. I just changed to the 133 to 1 ratio. And then you have I can go back to the 185 to 1 ratio, which is what Justice League is in. Justice League actually takes the full screen, looks great. I mean, the screen is nice and big, everything's nice. And then Snyder Cut is you have your bars on the side. So anyways, I took my bars down, watched Justice League, And right away, we open with that horrible, horrible footage. We all know the footage. It's supposed to be shot on an iPhone or whatever. It's kids talking to Superman. We have the horrible, I mean, they pixelated it on purpose so that they could get rid of his mustache. It's just really, really bad. I don't even like the Superman costume in hindsight now, because looking back at this, compared to what we get in the Snyder Cut, it's just awful. It really feels awful to me. And I haven't felt this way about a movie in a long, long time, that I really, really disliked it this much. I will say that I'm going to focus a little bit on Justice League and pop through it really quick before we get into Snyder Cut and breaking down some of those scenes. But in Justice League, I still really like that rooftop scene with Batman, that the movie opens after we have the Superman iPhone footage. We get that rooftop scene with the single parademon. I love that scene, because I love that. I think that's one of the quintessential Batman scenes. It looks like it was taken right out of a comic book. The tone of that is really nice. The way, Ben Affleck is moving, the way they had Batman move in that scene, jumping from the rooftop, doing his flip, doing everything that he did, that scene looks like it was ripped right out of a comic book. And I loved it then, and I still love it now. The problem is, it just doesn't fit with the rest of the movie. It doesn't, I mean, it's a great scene. I wish that was in the Snyder Cut, but you know what? It would have felt forced if it was in that. And there's another forced scene coming up in Justice League that I really, really didn't like. But I did like it at the time. I thought it was cool. So we have that rooftop scene, pretty cool scene, but it doesn't fit with the rest of the movie. Then we had, at about the 5-minute mark, we get to the music montage, and they start, spanning the planet, showing the mourning of Superman. And you have Lois at the memorial, of course, and you have Martha Kent at Clark's grave. And these are two scenes that, when we get into the scenes for Snyder Cut, I'll show some comparison pictures, but there's you can see the difference in how much brighter, especially Martha Kent at the grave. Your whole screen, you're in that big ratio, the full screen ratio, but it doesn't feel as intimate. It doesn't feel as like it doesn't feel zoomed in on her at all. I feel like in the Snyder Cut, you have a much better version of her, of what she's going through right there. It just looked wrong in Justice League. And when they pull away, as Martha's driving away and you see the foreclosure sign, it's at like 6 minutes and 29 seconds. It's a completely different tone. It's brighter. It's, everything's bright. The colors are more vibrant. Everything's brighter. And I know that people were wishing for that out of DC movies. It just doesn't work. It doesn't look right. And like I said, when we get to Snyder Cut, I'll probably A/B those here on the YouTube, and you'll be able to see the difference. But going back and forth, watching it in my theater today, nowhere near. It's not as good at all. Lois at the memorial, very quick. She puts her cup down on and then she looks at the memorial and they pull away. And in Snyder Cut, we have much more of an approach. We get the entire approach to it, and we'll get to all of that. The Wonder Woman scene in Justice League, so much brighter. Her standing on top of the statue, and just so bright. The gold in the statue is brighter. Again, we'll have more of that. Just didn't look right though. And it was too quick, way too quick of a scene. Much better, much more fleshed out scene in Snyder Cut. Really, really enjoy, and we'll get to that. I love that Snyder Cut scene. Bruce and Aquaman, we have that comparison. Here, brighter as well. I didn't like it. And that one in Justice League is at 11 minutes and 20 seconds. But the one that I didn't like out of that was when Jason Momoa dives backwards and like swims away, and you get the boom. And I forgot what it looked like. Because when I saw it live, when I saw it for the first time, we had nothing to compare it to. Seemed like a cool exit by, Aquaman. He's like, all right, Batman, and whatever. And he goes and he dives backwards, opens his arms and splashes in the water. And then you get the boom and he swims away. Watch it now. And you realize it's almost like they didn't even have that scene. And Joss Whedon's like, I got an idea. Let's do this. Because all of a sudden they zoom in on him and it's just a completely different cut. And then he dives backwards and then they show him swim away and you get the boom and it's like completely edited differently and wrong. And you know that it's wrong now. Because when you watch this scene in the Snyder cut, he just disappears, which is a much cooler way to an exit scene, like when Batman on the rooftop, you turn around, he's not there. No sound, no nothing. And that's in Snyder Cut, all you saw was the circle ripples from when he just went under the water and there's nothing left. Aquaman is gone. Such a better scene. That Momoa scene, check that out. And like I said, it's around 11 minutes and 20 seconds in the Justice League disc. Before you turn it into a coaster, check these things out. And it just looks horrible. The way he bounces, jumps back, and the way it's edited, it just looks horrible. At 1640, we meet Barry Allen. Again, so bright. It just doesn't work. The entire thing. All right. The Parademon at Star Labs, Themyscira at 2150. That's a comparison that we're going to get to deal with when we get into the Snyder Cut. All of this stuff, it looks so bright. It's so vibrant. The gold, there's more, you can see more color in their robes in Justice League than you can in Snyder Cut. The gold in their costumes, the maroon in their robes, the green grass, everything. It looks fantastic, but it just feels wrong because it's not the tone of this movie. And now having the Snyder Cut to compare it to, it's just not the same. And here's what I was thinking while I was watching this. I stopped play at 37 minutes and 45 seconds, right when Barry catches the Batarang. So that's Barry Allen meets Bruce Wayne. He comes in, blah, 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 everything. Again, slightly brighter, all of this. He catches the Batarang. I actually wanted to stop it earlier than that. I kept checking the time, like, how much do I have left? I was not enjoying this at all. I was not sucked into this movie at all. And here's why. It felt like a CW show. When you go back and forth between the Snyder Cut and Justice League, the production quality of Justice League feels like you're watching one of the CW shows. It really does. And this is the bright side of home theater. This is bright side home theater. I will rave about Transformers. I will rave about Hurricane Heist. It's very difficult for me to talk bad about something. But how do I not? What would my integrity be like if I sat here and said, I thought I was going to say I like Justice League, because when I first sat down to do this, I'm like, I'm going to compare the two of them. And you know what? Justice League, it has its place in this world because it looks like it's ripped out of a comic, because it's so bright. It's this, and that was before I compared it. As soon as I put Justice League on and we open with that Superman scene, I'm like, this is bad. This is bad. And then we get to that scene, like I said, the foreclosure sign when Martha Kent is driving off, and I'm like, it's so bright. It's so wrong. And then every scene after that, and of course, like I said, you get to the Wonder Woman scene. I was like, oh my God, it's so much different. And it's grainy. In the Wonder Woman scene, I forgot this part when I was going through this. So they zoom in on her. That comes up later on. It's at about, I'm looking, 28 minutes. So Wonder Woman's working on the statue. She's got that white dress on, that tight white dress on. It's super grainy. And then you compare it to the scene that's directly after that at 28:13. And it's an image, the 9 News report. Okay. And it's a bright white scene on that as well. But it's very crisp, not a hint of grain. Back it up to 28 minutes and you see Diana working on that statue, and it's so grainy. And the funny thing is the 9 News report that's on the TV is on a TV. When we're looking at Diana, that's a live shot. That should be a live shot. There shouldn't be any grain there, or less grain at least, right? Then that scene pans out to the Lois and Martha conversation at 28 minutes and 36 seconds, and they do something that I just can't forgive. I'd already was ready to get rid of this disc anyways, but now Lois is looking at the TV screen. Martha is sitting behind her. You're looking at Lois's back, so that means Martha is behind you, and Martha starts talking to Lois. Where in the room should her voice be coming from? Behind you, because that's where she is. Nope. Lois starts talking. She turns around, walks over to the table. The entire time that Martha is talking, her voice is locked dead center at the front of the room. Horrible, horrible choice. It just took me. I was like, what? Are you kidding me? This is horrible. No pan whatsoever. And I don't even know if this exact scene is later on in the Snyder Cut, but I'm going to check it out if it is. And we'll see how it pans. If it does pan, if it doesn't pan, I don't know. But artistically, I guarantee you the scene looks a hell of a lot better if it is in the Snyder Cut. But no pan there, that's horrible. I cannot forgive that. And I already was ready to whip this disc across the room. So, all right. That's enough of the rant. That's enough of, and I'm not throwing the disc out yet because I have to use it to compare the rest of the movie when we do get to the rest of the movie. But let's get to the Snyder Cut. Fantastic image. Yes, it is darker. And but it looks fantastic. It has great contrast. Fantastic contrast. Sorry, we're going back on a rant here. You want to see some bad contrast? Go to the scene when we see Victor and his dad. When we first meet them in Justice League, and he's coming home from work, and we meet in Cyborg for the first time, Victor, in his apartment. It's too bright. It's too bright. They brightened up this entire scene, which then takes all of the black levels and raises those. The entire scene is grayed out. I don't have a timestamp for that. It's after 16, 17, 18 minutes, something like that. But the entire scene is grayed out. And I do remember seeing that before, noticing that pre-Snyder Cut and being like, wow, this doesn't look very good. Later on, when they go to Bruce and Diana talking, and Bruce is working on the plane, the transport plane, you have some nice contrast there. So I was a little bit more forgiving. But knowing what I know now and having the Snyder Cut to compare it to, it looks like this scene was shot with the intention of, low light, a dimmer lit scene. But then they tried to brighten this up, but they didn't increase the contrast levels. So everything, all the black levels, just everything went up. So the entire scene looks grayer in Justice League. Didn't like that. But back to the Snyder Cut. Snyder Cut, I think that the black levels look great. I think the tone of this movie looks fantastic. I think it goes along with the tone of the movie, with the idea of the movie. And the CGI, it helps work with the CGI. It helps work with the makeup. In Justice League, Ben Affleck's makeup, his face looks fake. Why? Because they've turned all the lights on and you can see that he's wearing makeup. It looks horrible. But in Snyder Cut, it looks more realistic, at least in this first part. I know the very end scene there, it looks a little different. That gets a little wonky because that was filmed years later. But we're not talking about that today. So we're talking about episode 1, the first basically 37 minutes of the movie. I loved it. The sound, fantastic. I love the Atmos. It has great bass, great punch. We're going to get to all of that. So without further ado, let's get to what we always start with, the opening. And if you're following along on YouTube, as you see this opening scene fade out and you see me again, the rest of this podcast will be filmed in the 1:33:1 ratio. So the opening, what a fantastic opening compared to the mustache, the iPhone Superman. So we open this movie with the ending of Batman v Superman, and very dramatic, very good contrast. The kryptonite, the green kryptonite spear, you have that image going. You have the red laser, I think it was, whatever it is. I can't even remember what that is firing. Is it his eyes, I think? I can't remember off the top of my head. But slow motion and Superman screaming out and the sound moving across your room and the spear panning across the front of your room because the spear is through the back and it's up on your screen. Very, very nice image, almost 3D like the way that spear moves across your screen from top, from 1 o'clock down to 7 o'clock across your screen. Sound moves appropriately along with it. And of course, you have Superman yelling out, and that's moving from the front of your room to the back of your room over and over. It's just pulsing back and forth. All of this is going, and again, very dramatically shot. Great contrast. It is a very dark scene. After going back and watching Justice League and then coming back and seeing these scenes, you're like, it is very artistic. I know for a lot of comic book fans, we're not here to talk about the integrity of the characters and what this is like, but think of this like Sucker Punch or 300 or any of other, Zack Snyder's artistic movies. I think that's what he did here. Some people don't like that. I particularly do. I really enjoy this, and especially, all right, maybe we don't throw away Justice League. We just show you that we don't throw the disc away. You pop it in every now and then to know what not to do. I don't know. But this scene here, I mean, we're only not even 2 minutes into this movie because I'm going to jump to the next scene in a second. But this opening scene, it's setting your tone right away for the rest of the movie. Great image, great sound, the way it's moving around you. You have stuff panning across the front. You have stuff panning from front to rear. Fantastic. And then at 2:05, we get a great image of Batman. Ben Affleck as Batman. And the reason I timestamped this one is because I think this is the quintessential 1:33:1 image that sets you up for the rest of the movie and shows you how great this is. Okay? So, all right, a quick little disclosure here. I have a 110-inch screen. I'm sitting about 11 feet away from my 110-inch screen, roughly. It's huge. Even at the 1:33:1 ratio, I have to move my eyes to be able to see different things on the screen. Okay? If you're watching this on a 65-inch screen TV and you're sitting even 8 feet away, you barely have to move your eyes to see the entire screen. You're just sitting there and you're watching it. So you're not getting that experience of moving around. So when you shrink the screen down even more to, 1:33:1 and you put bars on the side, well, now you even have more narrow. So I understand why people are upset that we took the bars off the side and why they don't like that, but they don't mind bars on the top and the bottom. Okay? Because at the top and the bottom, what ends up happening there is you have a nice panning image. So images like from Lord of the Rings, when you're looking at landscapes and stuff, it looks fantastic. And as you're looking at your, say, 65-inch screen, and you actually might slide your eyes a little bit back and forth. So it's interactive. It becomes a more interactive experience. So that seems like it's more fun. If you put bars on the side, now I don't have to pan. I don't have to do anything. And it's not as engaging. You're not having as much fun. You're not moving your head at all. You're not moving your eyes. At 110 inches and up, really, depending on how far away you're sitting. But at 110 inches, I have to do that regardless. So I'm fully interacted. I'm looking up, I'm looking down, I'm looking to the side. And this image here at 2:05, where they start to zoom in on Batman, you're looking at this entire screen, and the bars on the side actually help this image because it's taking you and making you focus right in on Batman. You don't have to look to the sides. There's nothing there anyways, but you're still looking around the screen, looking at the detail in his chest, looking at the texture to his suit, looking at the texture to his hood, his ears, all of this stuff, looking at his chin, his face, his eyes, all of that stuff. And it's bigger, it's larger than life. It's coming at you as they zoom in on him. And I think the 133-to-1 ratio really, really emphasizes this because now you're focused. And on a giant screen like this, you're able to really experience that and move your head around. And even the way it's shot, everything behind Batman is out of focus anyways. It just really pops, really pulls it in. And the contrast, the blacks and the grays and the highlights, his eyes, all of that stuff looks fantastic in this one scene. I mean, it's a good scene to look at, but this one scene, the way they shot that and brought it in. And you also, of course, you have the score playing, you have, Superman still screaming, that's going over your head and to behind the room. Really, really great scene. But I thought this was the first, we're only 2 minutes and 5 seconds into the movie, but it's really just boom, hitting you right with I really liked it really helped me get into that 133-to-1 ratio. Really, really like that. All right. Up next, we have Cyborg at 2 minutes and 34 seconds. And this scene here, so your room has been filled with sound. Superman's voice is going over your head, ringing out over your head. All of this is going on. And now we get right into Cyborg's apartment, which looks fantastic, by the way. Not grayed out, great black levels, really pulls out the color in Cyborg's eye, in his suit, in his sweatshirt, the gray sweatshirt, everything really pops out of here. It looks so much better. But the sound, all of a sudden, the scene comes in, we're looking at Cyborg's back, and the sound comes from the front of your room, front left, over your head really loud and lands in the right rear of your room, and it's the mother box that's in Cyborg's closet. Just all of a sudden, whoosh, right over to there, and it's like you can hear it go right across your room. Fantastic. You compound that with the fact that, like, how good his room looks. And again, when I watched this the first time today, I took it for granted. I looked at it and I was like, oh, it looks great. And I loved the sound. That's why I made the timestamp, right? Well, watching Justice League and going into Cyborg's apartment and seeing how graded out it is, you're like, blah, it was awful. So check that out. Again, 2 minutes, 34 seconds, and get that sound going right over your head to the back of your room. Really, really cool. All right. Up next at 3 minutes and 20 seconds, we have a newspaper. And the reason I called it newspaper is, so we're back out of Victor's room, out of his apartment, and now we're watching Superman's sound waves echo out around the globe. And the way they portrayed that is it's kind of like they blurred the image to create these sound waves. And as those go by, of course, they're panning across your room from left to right, depending on how they're moving in the room, over your head from front to rear. But there's this one scene when we get to Gotham. I'm pretty sure it's Gotham. We get to Gotham and a newspaper starts blowing across the screen. And just the image that you're getting here is the newspaper looks like almost crystal clear. Check that out. And it looks like you could almost read the newsprint on this, but take that in contrast to the rest of the image on the screen. It's like, so the rest of the city is further away. That's a little bit blurred. The sky is looking pretty clear, but then you have those blurred images of the sound waves as those ring out, the sound rings, I should say, as those ring out, you have that. But then this nice piece of newspaper is floating by. And because it's closer, the camera is focused in on that. And obviously it's CGI'd, but how clear it looked. I really thought that played into the image and gave you a really nice sense of depth here. that you wouldn't have got if they hadn't made that newspaper so crisp. And I thought that was pretty cool. And it really shows the contrast of the sound rings as well. And all the way leading up to this scene, checking out those sound rings, the contrast in this movie, the way they cut this 4K edition looks so good. It's like those rings look really, really nice. Of course, the sound playing around your room is fantastic. But yeah, check out that newspaper. All right, moving on to 5 minutes and 15 seconds. And this one, we go to Themyscira here, and we've come through. We actually went over the ocean. We went into the ocean. The sound waves, the sound changed a little bit when you went under the water, which was really cool. But here, where we come into Themyscira, the view over, in the sky coming into Themyscira had a nice 3D effect to it. Then when you actually get to Themyscira, you break through the clouds and you see the grass. The grass it looks natural, nice green grass. But quick comparison here, I'll compare it a little bit more later when we get to some of the fight scenes out in the fields. But this is where you see like the grass isn't as vibrant as it was in Justice League. But moving on to the actual timestamp of 5:15, we've come down into the vault where they have the mother box. And we come down, and at exactly 5:15, we're looking at the mother box, which it looks so much better than it did in Justice League. Nice tone, nice colors to it, darker scene, nice contrast. But the boom you get, it makes you jump. There's a nice feel to it, really nice bass as the mother box like cracks open, or just, I don't know, I can't even remember if it cracked right there or not, or if it just moved. But you get a really nice bass punch, and then of course, all the Amazonians, they pull back even more on their bows. They're all sitting there drawn on it and frozen. But when this thing bursts and then everybody jumps, you jump, because it had a really nice tactile bass feel to it. Really shook your room, but it was just for a second, and that's at 5 minutes and 15 seconds. All right. Up next, at 8:21, King Tide, and this is where Ben Affleck, Bruce Wayne, approaches the village that he's going to go talk to Aquaman. I timestamped this one at 8:21 because this is the scene that matches up with Justice League, but back it up, because the approach to this, where we get to see everything that Bruce Wayne had to go through to get there, is fantastic. Okay, we're back to the 133-to-1 ratio, and we're shooting this landscape of mountains and snow and everything, and it looks fantastic. But the score that's going on during this journey as Bruce Wayne is crossing the mountains, he's on the horse, he's off the horse. It's got to be maybe 2 minutes long, this long approach. But the score, the bass, your room is vibrating at times to these drums, to there's just an undertone of bass in there as well. But then the image on the screen, you have snow blowing. So the snow further away is a blur, but the snow closer to the camera is crystal clear, giving you a nice 3D sense here. The overall look of the mountains in the background and the clouds and everything, the depth of field you feel here. And the journey that he's on, and how little and minuscule he looks on this giant screen, even though it's, 133-to-1, it's tall, but he's this tiny thing on the top of the mountain there. Looks absolutely fantastic. But again, that score that leads you up to this moment when he's going to get to the end of the cliff, edge of the cliff, and see the village that he's been making this journey to. And the score, settles down, and your room settles down. The silence, it gets a little bit quieter. You can still hear a little of the score. But as he's approaching, and we're getting to that 8:21 mark, as he's approaching the edge of the cliff, you could see off to the right side of your screen, there's a little waterfall there, water running off the top of the mountain. And as the camera zooms in, the sound of that gets a little bit closer. Super accurate. Pay attention to that, how that comes right in. I really felt, especially with my masking up for the 133-to-1, my speakers are now further away. It did not feel for a second that sound was over exactly coming out of my speaker, which has now got to be over 2 feet away from the edge of the screen. It's been pulled in. The sound, they're using the center channel to bring that in like that. And that little waterfall off to the side on the right, you can hear that clearly, and it actually pans in with the camera. The sound pans in as well on the right side of your room. Really, really cool. I mean, leading up to this, really cool scene as well. Fantastic bass in the score. A lot of fun in this scene. But yeah, check that out at 8:21. The King Tide, I call it, but it's that waterfall off to the right side. All right, moving on to the 10-minute mark. 10 minutes even. Batman meets Aquaman, and we are into part 1. We're done with the prologue now. We're into part 1 at the 10-minute mark. And this is the scene where Bruce Wayne meets, Aquaman, Jason Momoa, and he's sitting at Arthur, and they're having their conversation. But at this 10-minute mark, obviously they're in that bar area surrounded by villagers and everybody. But at this 10-minute mark is when they get closer, where Bruce Wayne and Arthur get closer to each other, and they have their conversation back and forth. And what I really liked about this scene, it gets into the 1:33:1 ratio, is how the scene is shot, and how, like, Batman, when they show Bruce Wayne, he's on the right side of your screen. And when they show Arthur, he's on the left side of the screen. But it's a narrower screen, but they're still, the composition is still there to show you that that he's looking at him on this side, he's looking at him on this side. But because it's a taller looking screen and less, it's narrower width-wise, you get these characters are much larger than life, because they're taking up a higher percentage of the screen. If this is just shot in the 1:85:1 ratio and you put Bruce Wayne over on one side, he might actually be the exact same size, right? But now you have more around him on either side of him. He's taking now that character, that Bruce Wayne character, that might be exactly the same size on the screen. You took the bars away and added image on either side. He's less percentage of that screen, so he doesn't feel as large. He doesn't feel as large. He doesn't look like a giant on the screen as he does here, because they're both, and these are the two of the big main characters of this film, and it's back and forth, and it keeps flipping. And just think of how much they're taking up. They're literally their bodies and heads are literally taking up almost half of your screen. To try and do that in a 1:85:1 ratio, it'd just be all head, and it wouldn't feel as dramatic. Never mind, you could never do that on a 2:39:1 ratio. You could never do that, because then it would just be like your eyes taking up like half the screen. So that's why I really love how this 1:30, it just gives a different feel. I don't want all my movies this way, but I do for this. Such a great artistic choice, the way it makes these characters just larger than life. And this really exemplifies it right here. Another scene that can really exemplify it at the 10-minute mark. All right. Up next, we have You're Out of Your Mind, Bruce Wayne. And that's at 12 minutes and 35 seconds. And that's the scene. This is that scene that I'm talking about where Aquaman makes his exit. And that's what he says. And in the Snyder cut, Bruce Wayne looks away at the women that are about to start singing, or they are starting to sing. He looks away, looks back, and at like 12:56, he looks back and he sees the ring. But in Justice League, and it's at the 11-minute and 20-minute mark-ish, this is where this scene takes place. And he's like, they zoom in on him, and it's just a horrible cut where they just zoom in and he jumps backwards and then makes a big splash and then disappears, and we get a nice boom out of it. But this exit here in the Snyder cut is so much nicer, just quiet and just a ring of water, so much better. So, all right, enough about that. Let's move on to 14 minutes and 19 seconds, Dusty. And this is the scene where Martha is at Clark Kent's grave and she's leaving. She's getting into her U-Haul, and one, we have a contrast here between what the image looks like in Snyder Cut versus what it looks like in Justice League. And if you're watching on YouTube, I'm flashing them back and forth so you can see the difference. But the tone and the way it was shot in Snyder Cut is so much different. It's darker, but the way the screen was cropped it's just more dramatic. It looks better. But the other thing that I really liked, and we'll get into the sound, is Martha says, "Move over, Dusty," or "Scooch over," or whatever, and Dusty is the dog that's in the front seat. He slides off to the passenger side, which is slightly off screen, and in the Snyder Cut, you can just barely see his nose. I think it's even still the same in Justice League as well. You can barely see his nose, but he starts whining like he's sad for her. And the sound perfectly placed right on that left side of the room. And it's pretty cool. And in Justice League, this scene takes place at roughly the 5 minutes and 14 second mark. But yeah, check out that scene. Watch them back and forth. So here it's at 14 minutes and 19 seconds. Justice League at 5 minutes and 14 seconds. Flop between those two and check out the difference in tone, the difference in how it's framed on your screen. And then as this scene plays out, that's when we're going to get to this scene here at 14:42, foreclosure. And this is that image of the foreclosure sign as Martha's driving past. Flip between this and Justice League at 5:14 and watch this exact scene as she goes by. It looks like it's noontime in Justice League compared to here. It looks like it's a dark setting, like the sun is setting. It's just dark. It's dim. It's a foreclosure sign. It's not supposed to be bright and cheery. It's a foreclosure sign. She lost her house. And Joss Whedon shot this like it's yay, sold. She bought a new house. It's completely different. And what is funny is, quick little segue away from Justice League and Snyder Cut. While I'm in the middle of doing this podcast, my daughter brought me upstairs, asked me some questions about picking a photographer for a wedding, and she's showing me that they have different editing techniques of the pictures. And one of them, I said to her, I go, "That's Justice League and Snyder Cut. Here's the live shot, nice bright day, swipe across the screen, nice little app that they had to show you how you can have your images, edited." And I was like, this is the difference. And these are what photographers do every day. But she was like, look at what they can make my wedding look like this. I go, yeah, they can make it look like nighttime if you want, whatever you can do. But it was funny it is exactly the same thing. Because I said to her, I go, this is the foreclosure sign in Justice League and Snyder Cut. It's like one looks like it's in the middle of the day. The other one looks nice contrast, nice. It took everything and it just made it come alive in these wedding photos. But in this here, it's just such a difference. Like I said, check it out. If you have to own both. I mean, who bought Justice League that doesn't already, Snyder Cut that doesn't already own Justice League? Nobody's going out and picking up a 4-hour movie on a whim, not having experienced the first one. So check that out. At 14 minutes, 42 seconds. Foreclosure. That's supposed to be depressing. All right, moving on. Enough on that. I'm heavy. A lot of rants today. A lot of rants. Okay, moving on to 14 minutes and 50 seconds. Yes, we just jumped a whole 8 seconds ahead in the movie. We're moving on to helicopter here, and I call it helicopter because this is where Bruce Wayne is coming back. He's about to get in his jet with Alfred, and but the helicopter coming in. So we're panning this shot right from Martha driving down the road in her U-Haul, and the helicopter comes in on the left side of the screen, but it starts at the left, kind of mid rear of your room, on the side of your room, comes down, lands on the front of your screen, lands at the front of the room in the front of your screen. Of course, the front of your screen, center of your screen. Anyways, so the helicopter lands there. Of course, Bruce Wayne gets up. Alfred and Bruce have a conversation on their way into the jet, and then the helicopter takes off. Really cool pans here. Lots of nice sound moving around. This scene wasn't in Justice League, so Joss didn't have the opportunity to screw it up. But I'm sorry, because I like Joss Whedon. I like what he did at Marvel. But anyways. So yeah, really cool scene here at 14:50. It's only 8 seconds since the last one, so check that one out too. Awesome helicopter pans. Nice bass there too in the thump in the blades. Really cool. And yeah, all right, we're halfway through this pretty much. All right, let's move on to 16 minutes even. Just start this right here and let it play out. It's called In Mourning. And this version of Lois and the world in mourning for Superman, so much better than the way they did it in Justice League. We have those scenes of Lois walking down the street in the rain. It very well shot, dark, dreary. She's in mourning. She has the umbrella up. She's carrying the coffee. Why does she have 3 coffees? Every morning, she gives the coffee. She gives 2 coffees to the police officers standing guard at the memorial. She walks up to the memorial. Check out that scene when she's walking up to the memorial and they're zooming in on the memorial, and she comes up from the right side, and it's just her boots you see. In the 1:33 ratio, it looks awesome. The way that it just looks so good. I love this scene. I love the contrast in the scene, the color, the depth of the color, how dark everything looks, even the flowers, the shininess of the wet roads, everything about this scene at the 16-minute mark. I just love letting this play out. I've watched this quite a few times since I got the disc a few months ago, because the song itself, it's the music going along with this. Such an awesome scene. It's hard to just focus on one thing but Snyder brings you into each scene. The way she sets down the coffee. I remember the first time I saw it, the way she sets it down on the barricade sitting there, which is just a 2x4. And you're so sucked into the scene. You're like, don't let it drop off. Now, does she leave that for Superman? I remember thinking the first time, leave it for Clark, because this is memorial. Not that he's there. But you're just so brought into this scene. It was so well done compared to Justice League, when you had Martha at Clark Kent's site, and then you have Clark Kent's grave where he actually is buried, which I thought was a nice touch. And then you have Lois at Superman's memorial type thing. That's what that felt like. And it was too quick. This one here, the world is in mourning, because here it also plays out. We get the same images that we had in Justice League of, in London on the bridge, the Superman logo in black. On YouTube, I'm wearing the black. I've got the black t-shirt on, Superman black t-shirt. Yeah, it's just so much nicer, so well done. And there's so much to nitpick in it. Just check it out and watch it a few times. It's worth it. I mean, Superman deserves it. We're all in mourning. Okay, moving on to another scene here that, we're going to get to a bunch of things, but let's start with the terrorists' approach at 17:45. And the first thing you're going to notice here at 17:45 is probably at about 17:48, you're going to hear these sounds moving back and forth over your head. It's part of the score, the music that's playing along. And it's like back and forth. It's kind of like directly over your head, maybe slightly behind. Really, really cool. But also the image that you're getting on the screen, you're looking down on the city as the terrorists approach. The cars are driving down the city, the white vans, I believe. And the nice depth you get, the 3D-ness you get of the cityscape looking down into these buildings looks really, really cool. And the bass as well. The bass in the score starts that you're getting some nice vibrations here. You're getting some nice feel from it. And then we pull up to the city. We pull up to the building. The cars pull up. Very crisp image. Great contrast. Great black levels. Great bass. It's just really, really nice setup for what we're about to experience here. I really, really enjoyed this entire scene as it plays out. But All right, let's move to 20 minutes and 7 seconds statue. And this is where Wonder Woman is standing on top of the statue. And let's talk about that for a second. Freeze frame that right there. Take a picture, do it, or just go to my YouTube page. Watch this scene right here on the YouTube page. I'm going back and forth between this image here and the image from Justice League, and you'll see the tonal difference. It's night and day. Almost literally night and day. The gold in the statue in Justice League is way too vibrant. It's way too gold. Almost looks fake. But in the Snyder cut, it's a dark, dreary day. The clouds are ominous. Everything about this scene is ominous, which it should be. Terrorist is about to blow up a city block of children. That's even worse than a foreclosure. You want that to be dark and dreary. But the detail that you're getting out of the Snyder Cut version too looks so much better. I'm going to talk about that in a second. And it is a little bit dimmer, and it's supposed to be, but I'll talk about like her lasso in a little bit. But this scene here, awesome. I just love the difference in how just comic booky that the Justice League looks. Snyder Cut is it's more of a film, and it's closer to like what Christopher Nolan did with the Dark Knight series. It's like that darker night. I like it. I really do. And after the fact, looking at just going back and forth between these two images here, you're like, how can you? I can't even enjoy the Justice League anymore because I know what it should have been now. I know what it should have been. But leading up to this scene, as the main bad guy there walking through the lobby, the sounds, the vibrations, the people behind him, the score, everything, the detail, the image on the screen looks so good. It's so crisp. Great black levels of him walking through the lobby of the bank or whatever. And everything looked fantastic. If a bank or a museum, whatever it was. Looked fantastic, but the sound moving around your room was fantastic. But then, like I said, at 20 minutes, 7 seconds, freeze it on that statue and just take a look. Take a picture with your phone and then take a picture of that same scene in Justice League, which is, I can't remember off the top of my head, at 8 minutes, at roughly 8 minute mark, I think. I'm not sure the exact timestamp, but in 8 minutes in, whatever. Check it out there. All right, moving on to, I'm not sure. Let's see what we got next. Yes, the magic lasso. That's what I was hoping came up next. That's what I wanted to talk about. This is where this scene's at 20 minutes and 49 seconds. 20 minutes, 49 seconds. Magic lasso. This is where dimming your image can actually make it brighter. Follow along here. So in Justice League, this is the scene where Wonder Woman, she first gets there, she takes her magic lasso, grabs one of the bad guys, pulls him up to get the truth out of him. Scene's completely blown out. It's super bright. Wonder Woman's suit looks great. Everything comic booky, every bright, beautiful image. No, not beautiful. Because in the Snyder Cut, everything's dimmed down, looking a little bit more dreary. But now you can see the detail in the magic lasso. So right at the 20 minute, 49 second mark, the lasso comes down. It's not empowered yet. It's not doing its magic yet. It grabs the guy. As soon as it grabs him and starts to pull him up, it lights up. In Justice League, when you look at him, especially like for the first time at 2057, it's so blown out, you can't see that obviously at 2057 in Snyder Cut, you could see the actual magic flowing through it. There's movement to the lasso. Everything is moving. It looks awesome. And then at 2107, you can see like it's a close-up of the bad guy talking to her and she's holding him up. And as the lasso's coming down out of her hand, you can see movement in the lasso. You can see the light moving through it. The part that's wrapped around him, you can see it circling. The light is circling inside the lasso or it's the lasso. It's circling around him. The light's moving. In the Justice League version, it's so bright, it's so blown out, you lose all of that detail. And both of these are 4K. Both of these are 4K discs. Both of these they have the same opportunities to do these things, but it's just so blown out. The whole screen is blown out that you don't get to see any of that. And it was so well done here. And yes, the rest of the image is a little dimmer than that, but it's supposed to be. They're going to blow up a building. It's, but that by dimming the rest of the image, you really get that nice view of the lasso throughout this scene. It was one of my favorite things I wanted to talk about today because it was so cool to do. I went back and forth on it a bunch of times. So cool to see that motion in the lasso, in the magic of the lasso. It was really, really nice. Okay. Again, I'm sorry, at 20 minutes and 49 seconds for that magic lasso. I really like that. So, all right, let's move on to Kick-Ass. I was going to work that in somewhere. I was going to do that this week, but I got completely inspired by the Snyder Cut. So we're going to talk Kick-Ass. No, this scene is called Kick-Ass at 21:50 because this is where Wonder Woman, when I saw this first time, when we watched it on HBO Max, when it dropped, and I couldn't wait to see the Snyder Cut, this scene here, the way it played out, the sound, the bass, the way they drew out this scene compared to Justice League, and that music, that Wonder Woman music, it just gets me go. I love it because ever since she dropped in Batman v Superman, and we had that, fantastic. I love it. It gets me. I stood up and clapped in my room all by myself, standing there clapping, watching the scene. When this played out, I absolutely loved this scene. The gunfire moving around the room, circling you as the camera circles around the room because the gunfire's, the bass hitting you, her moving, everything about this scene was fantastic. Absolutely loved it. 21:50. I haven't given any boxes of popcorn, so you're going to have to go back into the show notes and check out what gets boxes of popcorn because this one definitely gets 3 boxes of popcorn. But yes, the fantastic scene. At 22 minutes and 30 seconds, though, we get flying. And this is where Wonder Woman jumps through the roof with the bomb, the suitcase bomb, throws it up in the air. But at 22:30, I'm pretty sure is where if you freeze it, you get that 133:1 image of her at the bottom of the screen, the suitcase at the top of the screen. Just a really cool image that if we were to expand this out to 185:1 ratio, it just wouldn't be as dramatic. It wouldn't look as good. Also, this scene wasn't in Justice League because is she really flying here? Because we didn't know that when Justice League came out, we hadn't seen Wonder Woman 1984. Spoilers that Wonder Woman can fly. But they still could have included this scene because for all intents and purposes, maybe she just jumped that high, and then landed. So I still would have liked to have seen it, but in the 133:1 ratio, this frozen scene of her separated from the suitcase, I thought looked really cool on that screen right there. All right. Moving on to 23:08, Lambs to the Slaughter. And this is where the main bad guy, he's put down the handgun and he's picked up the automatic rifle. And he fires off a single shot, because it's on, single shot mode. But that scene where he flips it to auto and then starts to shoot, and that's what we get in Justice League as well. All we see is he picks up the automatic rifle and starts firing at the group, and Wonder Woman saves everybody. Fantastic scene. Love that scene in both respects. I love the image much better in Snyder Cut. Darker, nicer, better. I feel like much better black levels, better detail and everything. The sparks look brighter because the image is slightly darker. Everything looks great. The sparks off of her bracelet look great as this scene plays out. But I also like the meaning of this as well, because Wonder Woman does something at the end of this scene we'll talk about in a second. Wonder Woman does something that typically they wouldn't do, and she does. She kills him. She knocks the bracelets together and basically blows him up. But it's this flipping, like she took a shot, or he took a shot, didn't work, flips to auto mode, that doesn't work, and now he's about to load another clip. So all of that stuff plays out to being like, I got to stop this guy because he's going to stop at nothing. He tried to blow up the whole city block. Now he just wants to kill at any, there's no stopping him. I have to do this. And that's why she snaps the bracelets. That's why I think, because normally she should have just like wrapped him up. I mean, we can go back and forth, but I kind of like the way Snyder laid that out there, I feel, to justify her like killing him. Which, you know, we can debate that one way or the other. I'm sure John has his opinion on that as well, my buddy John. But the scene itself, fantastic home theater scene. Great bass, great movement across, the slow motion movement when the bullet goes from left to right. There's a slight, very, very slight pan there of sound, but it's a really, really cool scene. Then at 24:10, believe it. And that's where we get the explosion. That's where we get the scene from like Terminator 2 when they blow up the Cyberdyne and the building goes. This one was even better. Great bass, great extension of sound coming from the front of your room over your head as the cameras, as the scene drops down to where the police are and the rubble just blows over their heads, landing all around you. Really, really cool scene. 24 minutes, 10 seconds. She says, believe it, and she snaps her bracelets. Completely different line, I think, in Justice League. She says, monkey's line, like, I'm a believer or something, whatever. But yeah, this one here, much more powerful. Believe it, snaps her bracelets, blows the side of the building open, and really, really fun home theater scene, except for the fact that she disintegrated a man. But okay, moving on, 2647 boom tube, and now we're at Themyscira. The Amazonians or Amazons are protecting the mother box. The mother box starts vibrating like crazy. It cracks open. They all shoot, all the Amazonians shoot back. Great bass there. But then when that boom tube comes in, and for those of you not familiar, I don't think they say it in either movie at all. That's the DC version of like what the Tesseract does in Marvel, where you can shoot through space. You can use boom tubes, and that's how you get from one side of the universe to the other. I don't think they actually called it a boom tube in either of these in either of these movies, but from the comics and the animated series and stuff, those are called boom tubes. And it really lives up to its name here. Really, when that tube comes down, that lighted tube, and Steppenwolf comes out of that, fantastic boom. I mean, it's fantastic. We get a really nice boom out of that. Obviously, leading up to this scene, we're at Themyscira again, and we're seeing the difference. If you go to Justice League and you see how green and vibrant the grass was, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But it compared to here, it looks so much nicer here. I mean, it's nice, vibrant grass in the Justice League version, but this looks a little more natural. It's a deeper green. It's a darker image, even the sky in the background. But yeah, 2647, that boom tube, boom, really, really vibrates your room. Nice entrance by Steppenwolf here. So, okay, let's move on to 2726, Steppenwolf. This is his big entrance. We get a much better Steppenwolf here. This is the first time I saw this, the image of his armor, I guess it is, that live armor that's constantly changing, how that sound moves, how when he moves around the room, the sound of his armor moves with it. You have nice bass and vibration, just a steady vibration in the room, but pulsing bass as well, but also the nice intricate sounds of his armor moving, and that's all at the front of the room, and you have that, just a beautiful image in the 1:33:1 ratio of him standing up and just taking up your screen. Just look fantastic. Moving on to, or should I say moving into, tunnel vision at 30 minutes. We're going into the tunnel. Great battle, by the way, even before this. The battle all the way leading up to this inside that tomb there between Steppenwolf and all the Amazonians just battling it out. The parademons flying all around your room. Fantastic scene, obviously watching the entire thing. But check out this scene in the tunnel. Compare it to Justice League when they're in the tunnel in that one. And it's so much brighter. You wouldn't even practically know you're in a tunnel in Justice League. Here, it's a lot darker. Even the skin tone, check out the skin tone on the abs on some of the Amazonians when they hit when they're striking the supports. And it's in Justice League, it's a yellower, brighter skin tone. Here it looks darker, more natural, like a more, darker skin tone, tanner like, and because they're in a tunnel. But also follow, like, as they're hitting those supports, each one, every time you see that hammer hit the support, your room vibrates, you vibrate, you can feel that. But this is also more drawn out than Justice League as well. A lot more goes on in the tunnel here. And I really enjoyed it. I liked it. It explained how long this tunnel is and what it takes to get from one end to the other. In Justice League, it seemed like it was a little bit quicker. Didn't seem bad at the time, but knowing what they go through now, you can see it really plays to how the length of this tunnel, but also how dark it is, how nice it looks, how much detail, the contrast looks so much better here. Check out, 30 minutes, check that out. And then on the other side of it, we're going to get outside and have a real big contrast here. And with that, we will move along to 32-36, dropping in. And this is where Steppenwolf drops in both movies. Not the times, this is the Snyder Cut timestamp of him dropping in, but it's the exact same scene in both movies. But before this, in the Snyder Cut, the tomb or the wherever the mother box was being stored, that has now just fallen into the ocean. In Justice League, he broke out of it. He broke out of the sealed tomb and came in, and now he's chasing the Amazonians away because they have the mother box, and he drops in here. But check out the difference in contrast. Check out the difference in tone. Everything about it. The greens aren't as bright in Snyder Cut. Everything is dimmer and darker. But the lightning when he lands looks fantastic. When he swings his axe or whatever that is, the brightness looks great. The outlines around the clouds, as these scenes play out, as the scene leads up to this, the brightness in the sky, like you'll see the sun right behind a cloud. It's just that much brighter to you. It's just because the contrast is there. You have a nice difference between dark and light, as opposed in Justice League, everything is bright. The entire thing is bright. Much more vibrant scene. Like I said, like pulled from the pages of a comic book. Very vibrant scene, bright greens, bright maroons, if you can have a bright maroon, but you know what I mean? Like the colors are more vibrant. I love the Snyder Cut version where everything is toned down a little bit. It's a darker day, and it's what it's supposed to be. And even the clouds, they look so ominous in the outline around the clouds, the bright light coming from around the clouds looks fantastic. And then, of course, in this scene at 32-36, where Steppenwolf drops in, lands, you get a huge thud, fantastic bass through your room, bright, sparkling lightning as he lands, which contrasts the dimmer image on your screen. Fantastic. Okay, let's move along quickly to 3305, Arrows, and this is where the Amazonians are firing back on their horses. And check this out, as they're firing, you can hear the flip from the front of the room, but then the arrows are flying past you to hit Steppenwolf, but they're flying past you, and so you're hearing the noise behind you. It's very, very quick. You hear a flip in the front, and then as they go by. Really, really cool. Okay, moving on to 3408, and that's lightning. And if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see the image I'm talking about. It's not your typical lightning in the sky. This, I thought, was a really, really cool scene so what we have here is one of the Amazonians, she dove on the ground, she lassoed the mother box, but now this is the one that actually fires the arrow that pulls the mother box away. So what's going to happen is Steppenwolf is going to land and try to grab it, but of course it gets yanked away from him. And the Amazonians on the horses, they're going to pull it now because they catch the arrow and they pull the mother box and they get it away from them. But the one that actually ties the rope to the arrow and then fires the arrow, she does it and then she gets killed. Right before she dies in the Snyder cut, her eyes and everything about her gets like empowered. It's like she gets this lightning coming out of her, which isn't in Justice League. They just snap away from her in Justice League right before she's about to be killed. But in here, it's like, I watched it a few times. I thought that like she was being killed, as she was being killed, like the axe was already in her and then she turned to the lightning or whatever. But it's really, really nice, really cool. And it really pops out because the overall image is slightly dimmer. So that plays into it. But as this entire scene plays out, just go back and forth. Check out the Snyder Cut version. Actually, check out the Justice League version first, and then go back and watch the Snyder Cut version and tell me that isn't just a better shot, just a better version of the movie. And like, yes, the grass is dingier, it's darker, everything about it is darker, but the scene is supposed to be darker. It just seems more realistic, seems more powerful. I almost feel like the bass feels more powerful because the image is that good. Did I just say the picture is affecting the sound? Oh boy. Uh-oh. I'm going to get a few texts and emails on that one. But yes, fantastic picture. This entire Themyscira scene really just exemplifies the difference between the Snyder Cut and the Justice League and the tone of the movie and what it was supposed to be. And I really, really enjoyed it. The scene from here just plays out. The Amazonians lose the battle. Obviously the war is going to continue, but they lose the battle and they signal. And then part one is over. We go to part two. So that'll wrap it up for this podcast. It's a 37-minute part of a movie. And that's what this entire podcast, this length, is about a 37-minute clip of a movie. So that's it for today. All right, that will do it. We will wrap it up for there. Thank you to my 14 patrons. Thank you to everybody following along. I will be back on Tuesday to talk to everybody about all your comments about this. I'm sure we'll have plenty. Have a great weekend, everybody. I am going to go watch Snyder Cut. I'm going to watch this 37 minutes again because it's only 37 minutes. So much fun. So good. Going to make myself a drink, put it on my Justice League coaster, have a good time, go push play. Hey, Fred. This has been a Hey Fred production with theme music by Jeff Bernhardt and Throne Vault Productions.